shift clear down to verse 33. Wherefore, be not weary in well-doing, for ye are laying the foundation of a great work, and out of small things proceedeth that which is great. Behold, the Lord requireth the heart and a willing mind. And the willing and obedient shall eat the good of the land of Zion in the last days. Brothers and sisters, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's tithing, whether it's being anxiously engaged in doing the best you can and striving to keep the covenants that you've made and keep the commandments of God, these are all invitations for us to become more fully consecrated to God, to become more like Jesus himself, who was the ultimate example of what it means to be consecrated to God the Father in his life. Let me just share one little mission story with you to teach this principle. Elder Bauer and I were serving in Toledo, Paraná, down in Brazil, a southern state down in Brazil. Let me tell you about João and his family that lived in that ward in Toledo. They lived in a fairly modest house. Most people in North America would not have appreciated living in this kind of a house. He had many children, 4 or 5 children, and they weren't exactly rich. And João had a brother who wasn't a member of the church, and he invited Elder Bauer and me over to his house to teach this brother of his. They both worked at the same place. They worked for the city there in their water treatment plant, I believe. We arrived to teach that discussion, and his brother wasn't there. And João told us that things weren't going well at work, that he and his brother both had been hired fairly recently, and things were going poorly, and he was likely to be, he thought he was going to get laid off, as well as his brother. And he says his brother had gotten called in last minute to go to work, and so he wasn't able to come to this missionary lesson. So Elder Bauer and I shared a brief scriptural message with the family, because that's what Presidente Oliveira had asked us to do with every visit. And we said a prayer and got up to leave. And I don't remember what thought we shared. I don't remember much. But as we got up to leave, João nodded to his wife, who went into the kitchen and came back with a grocery sack. And he handed it to us. I opened up the grocery sack, and inside are 2 freshly baked loaves of bread. They smell so good. And then I looked at the children. Here's his wife holding a little baby, and she had 2 little children hugging her either side of her legs. And they were looking at this bag of bread. And then I looked closely at them, and I realized something. João is a very large man. Very, very large, very strong. And I looked at his children, and I realized they look skinny. They look hungry. And they were looking very hungrily at this bag. And my heart broke in that moment. Here was this family who's worried about his job, worrying about providing for the needs of the family, and they're now giving 2 loaves of bread to missionaries, who just the day before, I think, was P-Day, and we had gone shopping and had plenty of food. I didn't want to be rude, but I said to João, "Oh, thank you so much for this offering." And Elder Bauer and I tried to give the bread back. But João shook his head. And then I started to pray, "Heavenly Father, please help João to understand." And I had a flash of brilliance. I said, "I got it. Why don't we all sit down together and cut this bread up and eat it all together?" I thought that was a great idea. João didn't think that was a great idea. He stepped forward, and here we are with this bag outstretched, and he put his hand over mine. Did I mention that he's a really large man? And he said, "Elder Griffin, please take the bread." And I'm sitting here praying, help him to understand, help him to understand. And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, "My family needs the blessings of the Lord now more than we've ever needed them before. Will you please take the bread? And then all of a sudden my prayer got answered on my own head. I understood. And in that moment I said, we would be honored to take this bread on one condition, that you let us offer one more prayer for your family. At which point we knelt down and poured out our heart to heaven in behalf of this incredibly faithful and good family who was acting in faith. Later that evening when we were at home in our apartment, we were settling things down and I needed a little snack, so I went and I got one of those loaves of bread out and I cut off a couple of pieces and I put some butter and jam on it and I took a bite and I paused and I said, wow, this bread tastes really good. I've eaten a lot of bread in my life. But that particular bread on that particular day tasted especially good. And then young Elder Griffin realized something. Of course it tastes good, because that bread had a secret ingredient. It was infused with faith of this incredible couple who are so willing to give and to sacrifice for the Lord. And there's something miraculous that happens when human beings in a fallen world are able to do what it says in verse 34. Behold, the Lord requireth the heart and a willing mind. When we're, verse 33, not weary in well-doing, we lay the foundation of a great work. And out of small things, even 2 loaves of freshly made bread, proceedeth that which is great. Brothers and sisters, whatever situation you're in, if you look around and figure out how could you more fully apply this principle of be not weary in well-doing, because that's what Jesus did his entire life in perfect proportions. How can we now do these small and simple things that are infused with our actions of faith that will cause great things to be brought to pass?